You're welcome to today's episode of Chronicles of a Nigerian Woman. My name is Fagbeja, and today I'll be reading Romoke's story. I was 11 when I was first sent out as a domestic help from my village in Ogun State. That was after I finished primary school. My parents felt that it was time for me to start working to support them in bringing up my 6 younger siblings. I was taken to a family in Lagos State in January of that year, and I was brought back home in December, the week before Christmas. And thus began my annual journeys to live with various families. The woman from my village who arranged the journeys never let us go back to the same families, so we never stayed more than 1 year in a place. She negotiated our salaries and they were paid to her on a monthly basis. I knew very little about the financial aspect of the arrangements until I was a lot older. But that isn't the focus of my story today. The January of the year after I turned 20, I decided that I would take decisions about the places I was taken to and whether I wanted to return to a family or not. Basically, I wanted to take more control of my life. That was also the year I was taken to the Adio family. The parents of the house were in their mid-40s and they had 3 teenage children, and the husband's younger brother also lived with them. They were a nice family. The parents had a busy schedule and the kids also had quite a few after-school activities and were not free most days till about 7 p.m. This was the first place where I had a room to myself just outside the house. It was set up with a bed and a wardrobe and had its own bathroom and toilet, so I had my privacy. Most nights, I left the main house by 10 p.m. and I was free from then until 6:30 the following morning when the house was opened. My madam cooked most of the meals and stored them in the freezer. My job was to keep the house clean and organized and to manage things when everyone was out. I was treated with dignity. Nobody monitored what I ate, and as long as I did my chores, I could spend my spare time as I wished. Most times, I spent it watching movies on television while everyone was out. It was only the husband's brother who was always at home. He was a graduate looking for a job, but he hardly went anywhere. We developed a rapport to the extent that we spent most of our time together. I was not naive, even though I was a virgin. That was only because I had not had the opportunity to have sex, not because anything was really holding me back morally or otherwise. It was about 3 months into my stay that he pushed for it, and I willingly gave in. It became a regular thing since we had the house to ourselves most times. He often gave me some pills to use to avoid me getting pregnant. I did not know what they were. I only did what he asked me to do. It was all fun to me. My only fear was that I would be kicked out if I got pregnant, but he assured me that I would not get pregnant if I used the pills as he told me to. After using the pills for a while, I noticed that my period stopped coming every month. Sometimes they would not come for 2 months at a time. When I told him, he said it meant that the pills were working. I went home in December of that year for 2 weeks and I promised to return, so I did. And we continued our secret affair. It was around April of the following year that I fell sick, and when I was taken to the hospital, they found out I was 10 weeks pregnant. That was when everything became exposed. Luckily for me, Kayode did not deny the affair, and his brother insisted that he had to take responsibility. I could not believe my luck at landing an educated man just like that. But I did not know what I was getting myself into. Kayode's brother asked him to leave the house with me within 1 month. The only assistance they gave us was that in that time, I would continue to work as their help and they paid me. He had no money and no job, so he could not rent a house, and we had to move to stay with his mother in Ekiti State. She could not stand me and she did not hide it. She said I was a witch sent to destroy her son's life, and she took every opportunity to remind me that I was a mere domestic help with no pedigree. It had not taken long for me to realize that Kayode was a spoiled, lazy and irresponsible man. His mother fed him and he had no plans to look for a means of livelihood. What I thought was love while we were in Lagos quickly faded off as he paid no attention to me and only came to me when he wanted to satisfy his sexual urges. I had the baby, a boy, in November of that year. Though Kayode's mother took responsibility for the child, I was like an outcast. Once the baby was born, I became like a slave in the house. I fetched water, went to the market, cooked, washed everyone's clothes, including hers. I suffered beyond measure. I endured it for 2 years for the sake of the baby, but I knew I was in for a life of misery. Kayode went after every female he set his eyes on, to the extent that he even stopped asking me for sex. I realized that he had absolutely no plans. He never even asked to meet my parents. If I stayed there, all I would be was a slave to his mother. I decided to leave and return to Lagos and start my life over. One morning, I left very early before anyone woke up. The night before, I had stolen some money from my mother-in-law's room. I did not take too much, just enough to get me to Lagos. I left my son because I knew he would hold me back from being able to hustle. I found my way to Lagos and I never looked back. That was about 13 years ago. I worked as a maid for 5 years, and being wiser from my experience, I now knew I had to have some kind of plan for my life. I worked with one family for 2 years and another for 3 years. While I was on my second job, I also took permission and found time to learn hairdressing. When I left the job, I had enough money to rent a house and a store to start making hair, and that is what I still do till now. I met a man about 4 years ago, and we had a traditional wedding after having a baby 2 years ago. He sells mobile phone accessories, and we get by quite well on the money we earn. I have never told him about the child I left behind because I don't want him to ask me to go back and check him. I also believe that if he knows my past, he may use it against me later. I haven't forgotten about my son, but I have pushed the memory of him to one part of my heart, so he seems like a distant memory. Once in a while, I wonder what he'll be like now, but I have no intention of ever visiting that part of my life again. I hope that young ladies learn that they need to have a plan for their lives. Otherwise, they will find themselves in unpleasant circumstances like I did. Please share your thoughts about Romoke's actions in the comment section below. Remember to hit the subscribe button and to turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss any of my videos.